Throughout history, prisons and jails have been places of punishment, but for some, they became tombs in the most horrific ways imaginable. Today, we're delving into some of the most shocking and grim stories of jail deaths ever recorded. These tales are not just about the final moments of individuals, but they also cast a stark light on the systems that were supposed to hold them. Our first story takes us to the infamous Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. Known as The Rock, it was designed to be escape-proof. But for some inmates, the real horror wasn't the inability to leave, but the conditions inside. Take the case of Rufus Percival, an inmate in the 1930s. Driven to madness by the brutal and isolating environment, he reportedly took a hatchet and severed the fingers of his own hand, begging a guard to finish the job on the other. While he didn't die from this specific act, it highlights the extreme psychological torment that led many to their breaking point, with numerous unalived themselves over the years due to the sheer hopelessness of their situation. The true number and the stories behind them are shrouded in the prison's dark history, a testament to the mental agony that can be as fatal as any weapon. Next, let's journey back further, to the Victorian era in England. The concept of the separate system was introduced, a form of solitary confinement intended to give prisoners time for reflection and penitence. Pentonville Prison in London was a prime example. Inmates were kept in total isolation, even wearing masks called caps when outside their cells to prevent them from seeing or communicating with others. The psychological toll was catastrophic. Reports from the time detail a staggering rise in what was then termed lunacy. Men would descend into deep depression, suffer from hallucinations, or engage in frantic, self-destructive behavior. Many succumbed to this mental breakdown, their deaths officially recorded as natural causes, but in reality, they were victims of a cruel psychological experiment. The silence of their cells became their executioner. Now let's consider a more modern and equally disturbing case. In 2012, Darren Rainey, an inmate at the Dade Correctional Institution in Florida, was locked in a shower stall by guards. This wasn't a normal shower. It was rigged to spray scalding hot water, reaching temperatures up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Rainey, who suffered from mental illness, was left in this chamber of horrors for nearly 2 hours. By the time guards checked on him, he was found lifeless on the floor, his skin reportedly peeling off his body. An initial investigation was slow and controversial, with some claiming his death was due to complications from his mental health issues. However, witness accounts from other inmates painted a gruesome picture of torture. They heard Rainey's screams for mercy, begging to be let out. This case sparked national outrage, exposing a culture of abuse and impunity. It is a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest danger within prison walls comes from those who hold the keys. Another disturbing pattern of deaths involves what's known as positional asphyxia. This occurs when an individual is held in a position that restricts their breathing, leading to suffocation. A tragic example is the story of Natasha McKenna in 2015. Held at the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center in Virginia, McKenna, who had a history of mental illness, was being transferred. During a struggle, multiple deputies in full hazmat suits used a stun gun on her multiple times while she was restrained in a chair with a spit mask over her head. Her heart stopped, and she died several days later in the hospital. The official cause of death was excited delirium, a controversial diagnosis often associated with in-custody deaths involving restraint. But for many, her death was a direct result of being overpowered and placed in a position where she simply couldn't breathe. It's a scenario that has repeated itself in jails across the world, where a moment of restraint turns fatal. Let's turn our attention to the issue of medical neglect, a silent killer in many correctional facilities. The story of Terrell Thomas in Milwaukee County Jail in 2016 is a harrowing example. Thomas, who was bipolar, was arrested after a public outburst. In the jail, as a form of punishment, guards shut off the water to his solitary confinement cell. For 7 consecutive days, Terrell Thomas was left without a single drop of drinking water. Other inmates heard his desperate pleas for water, but they went ignored. He grew weaker and weaker until he was found lifeless in his cell. The cause of death was profound dehydration. It wasn't an accident or a moment of oversight. It was a prolonged and deliberate deprivation of the most basic necessity for life. The subsequent investigation led to criminal charges against several jail staffers, revealing a systemic failure and a horrifying lack of basic human decency. From the United States to international shores, these stories are not isolated. In Brazil's notoriously overcrowded prisons, like the former Carandiru Penitentiary, riots often end in mass casualties. In 1992, a riot at Carandiru resulted in a police massacre where over 100 inmates were killed. Many were reportedly executed in their cells after they had already surrendered. The conditions that led to the riot, overcrowding, rampant disease, and gang warfare meant that even without a massacre, the daily death toll was appallingly high. For many inmates, entering a place like Carandiru was a death sentence, whether it came swiftly from a bullet or slowly from disease and violence. These accounts are deeply troubling, and they force us to confront uncomfortable truths about justice, punishment, and humanity. They show what can happen when systems fail, when power is abused, and when human beings are stripped of their dignity. The stories of Darren Rainey, Terrell Thomas, and countless others are not just tragic anecdotes. They are dire warnings. They highlight the critical need for oversight, reform, and a fundamental respect for human life. Even within the walls of a jail, forgetting these stories means risking their repetition. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please know that help is available. You can reach out to crisis hotlines or mental health professionals. Your well-being matters. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video informative, please consider liking and subscribing for more deep dives into historical and social issues. Stay safe, and see you next time.